So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to start by thanking you all for being here tonight. It's certainly an important project to us, and part of our goal is to get your engagement in what we're trying to do. And what I thought I would do tonight is really just walk you through what the process will be, kind of open the kimono on what the review will be, what we're trying to solve for, and ultimately how we're going to do that. And what we'll try and do is get me to talk for not too long, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. What's on your mind is probably more interesting than what's on mine now. So to start with is this slide reads from the bottom up, and the bottom talks about a traditional review, and that's exactly what we're going to do, and that involves hiring a world-class consulting firm that has access to data from around the world and from all the different basins in the United States and the different areas of Canada as well. And so Wood Mackenzie is that firm, and we've hired them. What we're doing is we got a local firm, GLJ, extremely well regarded here in Alberta. And we're always just looking to make sure we're not taking somebody else's point of view in interpreting data. So we're getting that data and we're having it checked again. And then even for a third piece, we have a PhD student who is actually going through all of the data. We talk about certifying it, but what it's really trying to do is get the consistency and make sure that we try and remove any biases there might be. So we're really dealing with one set of data that we can all rely on, and that gives us the ability to all have the same information in front of us as we work through some of the challenges. And so what Wood Mackenzie does and what we will do is essentially take the information from around the world, from around North America, and what you're really trying to do is just see how does Alberta stack up against what's the cost of doing business and the returns in Saskatchewan versus Alberta, North Dakota, Texas, Pennsylvania, and other basins around the world. And so it's just like if we had an apartment here in town and we wanted to figure out what we rented it for, we'd go check 5 or 6 other apartments that are on the same bus route, same view, about the same size, and you try and size yourself so you know how comparable you are to those other jurisdictions. And that is a very difficult task to do, but it's one that companies like Wood Mackenzie are very practiced in, and so we expect to get very good data with the way that we're approaching it. In addition to a traditional review, we think the world is complicated enough. There's a world of unintended consequences, and so what we're trying to do is add 3 more lenses onto what would normally be done in a traditional review. So the second lens that we're going to add is an investment banking perspective, a capital markets perspective. And so while the first one is kind of a theoretical view, as we have all the data and we can compare the jurisdictions, what a capital markets review does is just take a look at companies that operate in Pennsylvania, companies that operate in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Texas, and what kind of returns are those companies making. Because if you had one basin, if you had Texas was getting returns like this and Pennsylvania was getting returns like this, the investors here will gradually flow to the place where they can get higher returns. And so it's just another data point. It's a bit of a blunt tool, but it just gives you one more check on your theoretical data that you have in the first piece. And then the next review is the economic overlay, and we find that one very interesting. Last year, Alberta collected $9 billion in royalties, and we're thinking that you can look at that figure. If you imagine this is $9 billion, if you imagine it as a lever as much as a container of money, yes, it's got $9 billion in it, but if you adjust that lever a bit, what it does is it affects about 65 or $70 billion of money that's spent in Alberta, and so that's restaurant meals, hotel nights, fracking sand, stainless steel, rent, salaries. So all of the activity, because this is where the jobs are, this is where Alberta's wealth comes from. Yes, the $9 billion is the revenue that we as Albertans get for the resources, But I think there's an opportunity to understand the complete economy, because if you work this lever artfully, you can potentially make this pie bigger than we had before, and that creates more wealth in Alberta. And so Peter Terzakian, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, this is kind of a passion of Peter's, so we don't start from zero on this one. Peter's been studying this, and we'll be updating this and have the ability to understand or try and model, when you do something with royalties, what do you get in the rest of the economy. So that economic overlay is very important. And then the last piece up there is the strategic piece of this. And we're doing a royalty review, and we think there's an opportunity here to really look at the future, what we expect the markets to be doing. And we're not trying to predict the price of the commodity, but there's some really starkly challenging issues that are coming up in the marketplace. We all see them in forms of price of the commodities. But in Peter, in some of his research, he talks about the renaissance of the American oil and gas industry. And so what we need are strategies. Alberta has always won the gold medal in ingenuity and diligence in getting oil out of the ground more efficiently, faster, better than most places in the world. And Alberta is renowned for that. Some of our technologies are being used around the world that were developed here. That we still need to do, and we have a real challenge in this basin. We need to continually reduce our costs because we're farther away from markets than other suppliers. But if we've been good at getting out of the ground, what we did with that oil and gas is, when it came out of the ground, we sold it to our friend to the south. And they've got a great credit rating. They pay on time. We're friends with them. We like them. They like us. And it's been a great arrangement. That's about to change. It's not that they'll stop liking us, and we'll still beat them in hockey. But the United States is going to become self-sufficient in oil and gas over the next relatively short period of time. Just to give you the context, in Texas, if you just look at their incremental production, not their total production, just incrementally, what they've grown their production in the last 4 years, it's more than Alberta produces in an entire year. That's just their incremental production. North Dakota has the same kind of curve. It's smaller, but it's so as the United States starts to gain its self-sufficiency, we're going to find our very best customer, wanting less and needing less of our product, but we're still competing with us for where we want to sell it. And so that doesn't mean, we put down our tools. What that simply means is you need to have a strategy. And that's why this top box speaks to not only what's the best ways to get at this resource and reward innovation, but we need to figure out how and where we can sell the product. And so what we propose is we put the foundation in with the traditional review, we check it with a capital markets review, we understand its impact by looking at the economic overlay, and we talk to everyone we can and try and develop a position strategically on how to take Alberta forward. And we think the opportunity is really to get Alberta kind of right on top of its game for the next 10 years. We will need to be there. We have some great partner companies here in Alberta, and we're going to have to be thoughtful and strategic about how we ultimately move this forward. So we spent a little bit of time when we started about, what you won't want to do is race out and get going, and you're not exactly sure what question you're trying to solve for, or what kind of answer or what kind of problem you're trying to find a solution for. And so we worked up our 4 objectives. And when you look at these, you can see that some of them compete with each other. There's tension to them. And also there's 4 of them. And we think all 4 of them are equally important. The first one is to get it on all of your behalf. All of you are owners of this resource. We're going to try and get the optimal return we can for you. The most important word in that sentence is the word optimal. It's not maximize. Maximize kind of infers I win, you lose. And these are some of the worst deals we do in business, is something that lopsided, because what happens is you're not my partner for very long because I put you out of business, or you're not very innovative, or you just run a poor quality company. What you want to do is have an agreement where there's tension, is that I'm making a good return, but my suppliers are also making a good return because they become very well-run companies. They're innovative, they respect the environment, and they're just good partners to work with. So you want to make sure you create that tension. So our proxy for, we're not going to try and answer the question, how much should a company make? The question really will be solved by, can Alberta attract investment? You know, if you go back to that apartment that we talk about, if it's worth $1,000 a month and we offer it for $800 a month, your phone will ring off the hook, your voicemail will fill up, and you will have left $200 a month on the table. If you offer it for $1,500 a month, your phone won't even ring, and your apartment will be vacant. And so you need to try and find that spot where you're extracting the optimal amount of rent out of those resources, and your partners are still healthy and have the ability to do the things that you expect from them. And so the third objective is, you know, if we are going to take a strategic look at this, we're the owners of this resource. Should we stand back from it? And we should wonder, you know, what should we do with this resource? Should we sell it in its raw form? Should we upgrade it? Should we refine it? Should we try and develop a further string of value added? I think those are very good questions we should ask ourselves as Albertans, and I don't think it's one that is both philosophical, and it's also one that is very strategic. It needs to have a business case, and ultimately what we'll be trying to do is find those kernels of ideas or the opportunities that we can create sustainable competitive advantage. If we're going to have almost an unlimited supply of very low-cost gas in this product, what can you do with it? So those are the questions that we're challenging our experts with. And the other word you see in there is innovation. And we're constantly asking ourselves, what are the ways we can reward innovation in developing our resources? Because from here on in, the rocks get deeper and they get tougher. So the most innovative companies, if you have a partnership, whether you're fixing cars or whether you're extracting resources or whether you're running a tourist operation, you want your suppliers to be the most innovative, well-run companies you possibly can. And so how do we, is there ways we can, with this royalty system, with this lever, that we can attract the best, most innovative companies and support them to be partners with us here in Alberta? And the fourth item is, you know, you'd have to be living on a different planet to believe that the environment isn't as equally as important as any of that is. You know, we think it has significant implications on market access and simply our social license to operate. So we look at all four of those objectives. I've used the analogy of a four-legged chair. You know, if all four legs are exactly the same length, the chair is very, very solid. It'll sit forever. But if one leg is longer than the other, it's very unstable. And so if we leave any one of those objectives behind, it'll bite us at a later date. So we're very focused on solving any challenges and opportunities we have and making sure that we look at all four of those objectives as we go through those solutions. And then we chose the panel. And you can see a few things here. One is it's very small. And what it's designed to do is actually fit together to form a team. And the other thing you see is you don't find four people who believe they have the answer to everything. What we have is complementary skills that we think allow us to ask difficult, challenging questions that get us talking about the right things. And we believe we have the ability to listen hard, and to listen in a way that will come up with the insights that come from very talented people. And so you see Leona, excuse me. So you see Leona Hansen is there is the mayor of Beaver Lodge. Leona is here. Leona is not very tall. Stand up, Leona. So Leona is the mayor of Beaver Lodge. Grand Prairie is a suburb of Beaver Lodge. Or maybe it's the other way around, I'm not sure. But Leona's worked in economic development her entire career. She ran a community futures organization up there. She lives and breathes that small business that is kind of the heartbeat of the companies that service our energy business. She's a mayor, so she's used to kind of herding cats and finding consensus in different opinions. And she's an extremely good listener, and she's smart. And so what she really brings to us is that person who is, she might not say an awful lot every night, but she has some great kind of inspirations when she's listened and heard things we haven't heard. The other person is Annette Trimby there, and Annette is the president of the University of Winnipeg, and people ask me, what the heck do we need somebody from Manitoba on this for? Some of you would know Annette. She worked in Alberta for 30 years. She just took the job last year as the president of the university. She was the deputy minister of many important ministries. She was the deputy minister of finance for a number of years. And what Annette is probably as smart as they get. She's a botanist by training. She's got a PhD. And her expertise is real complex issues and trying to frame them in a way that people can understand them. And really importantly, to frame them in a way you can create good public policy. Because we talked as a panel before we had talked to Annette is, if you take a look at all the reports governments have requested over the years, not just royalties, just think of how many of them kind of sit on the shelf and don't do anything. So there must be something that business people like me don't understand about public policy. So what Annette does is allow us to frame things properly and take the work we do and successfully put it into good public policy for Albertans. And then there's Peter Terzakian. Annette is not here, but Peter is. Peter is right there with his hand up. Peter is an economist, but he's still a nice guy. Peter's an economist and a partner at ARC Financial. ARC Financial has more than $5 billion invested in oil and gas here. And Peter is one of those guys that's both book smart and street smart. Peter would be well regarded in the industry as probably one of the more insightful people in terms of analyzing oil and gas. But he's really kind of got his feet on the ground smart as well. And the last piece we love about Peter is one half of his brain, he's a historian, and he's very respectful of what's gone on the land, the people that come before us, the successes we've had, the challenges we've had in the past. Because if you don't understand the past, you're at a bit of a disadvantage to understand the future. And so, just as an example, the first thing Peter did was wrote the history of, or compiled the history of royalty reviews in Alberta. We got the resources in 1931, and we've had 10 reviews since then, and Peter's kind of documented them all. So that's one half of his brain we love. The other half is he's a futurist. So you've got this historian kind of person married up with a futurist, and Peter pushes us every single day, to consider this, and what are we going to do about that, and how will we meet this challenge, and how about this opportunity. And so Peter kind of leads the technical part of it, and is really has the respect of the industry and the respect of the people that work at Department of Energy and nonprofits alike to really create a good discussion, because you need that respect at the front of the room to get people to dig down and try and challenge problems. So Peter's a huge asset to us. And the last person is me, because you wouldn't want to do anything in life without a banker. So the last slide is a bit of an eye test for you. So if you cover one eye, on the right-hand side, you see the technical part of the review. And you'll see we've done a few things there. One, we've divided the industry into 3 streams. Sometimes when we get kind of cross-threaded in discussions, we have people trying to generalize about royalties in Alberta. It's impossible. It's not a homogeneous. We have literally hundreds or maybe thousands of royalty rates with different inputs in Alberta. So you simply can't say, let's talk about royalties. And so we've divided up into oil and gas. Crude oil, oil sands, and natural gas. So we can start to just focus in, because even who do we want to be competitive with varies in those different streams. So it allows you to focus, and then you can see that little string of pearls there in a circle is we're getting 10 kind of experts, people that are already up to speed in that particular stream, and they're going to be our group of people that we're going to keep together for the month of October, and we're going to work through these big challenges and big opportunities. So what we do is get the benefit of, we take input from people, give us submissions, they've sent us papers, there's big challenges and big opportunities there, and what we're going to do is have those experts go through them, prioritize them, and try and find solutions and strategies to work them through. So you can see this panel doesn't really have to come up with the answers. We're getting an amazing group of people that represent a whole variety of disparate points of view. We're not putting everybody in the same room with the same point of view. They will come from all over, but their common denominator will be that they're expert in that field, and the other one is they've agreed to take off their hat. They might work for a company, or they might work for a particular think tank, or they might work at a university, or they might be retired, and their job is to try and solve our 4 objectives and work for the greater good of Alberta, as opposed to grinding a saw for their own company or for a book they wrote a couple of years ago. So the opportunity is really in a fairly compressed period of time to get some tremendous expertise applied against the significant issues that we're facing. And then our job as a panel is to listen, and listen well, and try and extract some of the best insights that come forward, and then ultimately talk to our elected officials, talk to the Department of Energy, and ultimately talk to our partners, the people that invest in Alberta, to talk about how we can find the common ground to take any recommendations forward. So that's the technical piece, and we're really confident we're going to do a good job for you on that piece. The other side, I think, is almost more important. So just assume we're going to do a really good job for you. The other part is talking to everyday people in Alberta and convincing them that they can have an opinion on this. And I think lots of times people think, oh man, it's royalties, this is so complicated, I'll never understand that, I can't add anything to that discussion. And it's true, because the discussion we've had in the past has interlocked principles and the technical part of it. And the technical part is so complicated, and the principle part is so emotional sometimes. You just get this kind of hopeless discussion where people can't even find the common ground to speak about. And so what we're separating these apart is we've got a great process to look at the technical parts of it, and what we're talking to you and to your neighbor, your kids, your parents, is about what should the principles be that we should frame our development of resources in Alberta. And every single person in this room and every single person in Alberta can answer that question. Because we could walk into any facility, and you don't need to know how it operates. You don't need to know all of the details about it to know by what principles you want it to operate in. So we hear people talk about, we want to make sure that it respects the environment and has a pace of development, so we're not going too fast or too slow. We want, we hear companies lose money at $30, they make money at $60 a barrel. What the heck happens at $100 a barrel? And so they want to be confident that it works at all of those price points. And then they hear, drilling rigs are moving to another province, or they move into Texas, or they want to know that we're not leaving any money on the table, but that we're comparable to other jurisdictions. So those aren't all of the principles, but those are examples of things that people talk to us about. And so we truly believe that we can get to the spot to ask Albertans and all of you the question, what needs to be true for you to be confident we have a good royalty system in Alberta. And we'll get those principles for people. And then you can see all of a sudden things start to clear up a little bit, because we got those principles. We'll set up a program. How do we measure our progress against those principles? And then the technical part becomes something that, just like a company adjusts its inventory, adjusts its prices, adjusts the products that it sells based on technology, markets, competition. And so this becomes less emotional and more business, and business would expect us to manage this. But what the principles give us is the predictability, the reliability, and the stability. As investors will know, this is Alberta's position on people who invest here. This is Alberta's position on pricing royalties based on commodity levels. This is Alberta's position on the environment. This is Alberta's position on comparability to other jurisdictions. So all of a sudden you set a framework that people can make decisions and be confident you will stay with it, and the rest of it becomes technical for sure, but something that's a little more business than usual. And I think I got caught being a little bit optimistic by the press in Calgary saying maybe this will be the last royalty review ever, and that might be a little ambitious, but you can see if you separate them, it just doesn't become this heart-wrenching experience of trying to work on both things at once. And so that's ultimately our approach to the whole process. We have a great process for the technical part of it, and we're really, I will ask all of you to, talk to at least one person tonight when you go home or tomorrow and get them to register on the website, and then they'll be part of the conversation, because we're going to have that conversation with Albertans, and Albertans will be the ones that put together these principles to guide our development of our resources into the future.